Okay. Okay. And if I might, we can. This is going to be edited. We're clearly not live. So if I screw this up, I'll just do it again. Okay. So I'm just gonna. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I have with me Tom Symes. Tom is the current owner of Thomas Design and Build and spent 32 years in the film and television production business for a number of companies, working in and around the film and TV business, doing production, sales, and a number of other things. And I wanted to bring Tom on the podcast, on the show, to explain a little bit about life after broadcasting, life after film and television. Because a lot of us, I think, have gotten into the industry and wonder what else might be out there for us. Tom, tell us a little bit about how you got into the business and your history in the film, television, and production business.
So I started interviewing. My sister was already working in the advertising business. She was working at DDB, and she was a senior account executive. I think at that time she was working on Canadian Airlines and I think Shoppers Drug Mart. And that was with Duncan Bruce, and she was actually working with Duncan. He wasn't one of the senior guys then; he was one of the creative guys. I started interviewing just everywhere. That it was basically, we were in a bit of a recession at that point.
And what year would that have been? Was that 92 or 93?
Yeah, I think it was 92. Mm-hmm. And I started interviewing, and I was interviewing at some agencies, and I was interviewing at publishing companies, and I'd gone into a couple television stations and been interviewing for sales jobs there. And the one that was I went for 4 interviews at Brunico. And Brunico was kind of going through a bit of a rough time. So they had Playback magazine and they had Strategy magazine. And they were the 2 pillar brands that they had launched. They didn't have any events at that point, but they had Playback and Strategy magazines, and they were published bi-weekly. And they were kind of the Bible in the industry. But the advertising support at that point had gone down quite a bit just because of the recession. So they needed a killer salesperson, and Ken and Kathy and Shelley Middlebrook, who you'll hear me reference. Shelley was in sales too. At that point, they all interviewed me, and they said, okay, fine, here, if you want a job, here are 30 files or 100 files, whatever it was.
Go eat what you kill. Yeah.
And if you can make some money, you got a job. And at that point I was like, okay, I'll do it. And it is today, and was then, an incredible company to work for. It was a very good training ground for me. I started out in sales on Playback, and worked my way up, to publisher at the end. So started out as a junior salesperson, went into sales management. Then I was an associate publisher, and then a publisher. Along that way, we launched a whole bunch of other brands off of Playback. So we did Playback International, we did Canada on Location. We started an events division. So the brand basically covered film and television, TV commercials, location shooting in Canada, and then news. It was pretty heavy on the news front. So if there was a CRTC regulation, or new companies launching, or a CPAP meeting in Ottawa, like all of the news was covered on it. But Jim, the owner, he was really involved, and he was there at every stage, helping us build business plans, and getting clients, like helping us target clients to launch new products and everything. Like it was just incredible, and it never stopped. And it was a lot of fun. So that's how I got into the business. And then after that, we launched a brand called Boards. We did the business plan, and it was an international magazine about TV commercials, and the TV commercial slash branded content business, because that's when it
Mm-hmm.
started to emerge. And I did that. We launched it in at the Cannes Advertising Festival, and I'd been to the Cannes Advertising Festival prior once, and I'd been to MIP TV and MIPCOM a few times in Cannes, which was different because that was a television market. But we went to Cannes with basically a 8-page pamphlet on the international business of television commercial production and content that was targeting clients, agencies, and the production business. And I remember Kathy Hamill was my boss at that time. She was a group publisher, and we went and we literally stood out front of the I think it was the whatever the main building was there where everything took place. On the Quasset, we basically stood out front in our suits, which nobody was wearing suits because it was a pretty casual environment, and gave out pamphlets for this magazine we were launching in a month. Um, and it took off like crazy. It was nuts. So we launched the first magazine a month later, and it was distributed to I think it was 19,000 people
Mm.
internationally, predominantly U.S. And Europe, and then the third largest distribution was Canada. So that was kind of the beginning of my marketing and advertising and sales kind of career.
So you started in the '90s with
Mhm.
Playback magazine, and then eventually boards, boards.
Yeah,
Um,
Boards Magazine. Or it
and
wasn't Boards Magazine, it's Boards a brand, but yeah.
got it. So what do you think has changed? I mean, back then there was a really clear distinction between filmmaking, television, video production, event production, et cetera. There were kind of clear lines and clear demarcation points between these categories and these industries, and now those lines are incredibly blurry.
Yeah.
The Joe Rogan famously has talked about how the mainstream media doesn't, but he's got 55 million subscribers to his podcast, so he is the mainstream media. How has the relationship changed? How have the categories changed, and what does the industry look like now versus the way it looked like then?
The industry was completely different. It was very siloed. Um, when I say siloed, it like the feature film business, the television business, and the advertising business and marketing business were very separate. And there was formulas to make everything. So the film and the television, the feature film business was basically, still heavy duty, high end film, big, huge budgets. The Canadian business was there was a lot of location work, but the features and the rest of it shot by production companies in Canada. It was very hard to get big budgets. They started to get big movies and stuff shot back then. That was the day when Alliance and Atlantis were launching. So Atlantis is Robert Lantos, and Michael McMillan was Alliance, which was TV and film production. And the TV production was very similar in nature, and the advertising agencies and TV commercials were, there was a formula to shooting those, and it was a very easy formula where the director was the commodity and the big talent, and the agencies had a lot of money for TV commercials. And there was no real branded content at that point. So it was completely different from what it is today. Um,
And Tom,
the
can
first,
you, for someone who doesn't know the term branded content, tell
yeah.
us a little bit about what does branded content mean?
Well, back then there was product placement, which means that, if you were shooting like a an episode of Friends, let's say, and Coca-Cola wanted to have a Coke in it, they would pay to have the product put in, with Jennifer Aniston drinking the Coke. And that was called product placement. There was no branded content, as in the first kind of real memory I have of really good quality branded content was BMW films.
Clive Owen.
Um, yeah, Clive Owen shot through RSA, which is Ridley Scott's company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they shot these little mini epic films that Clive Owen directed. Or sorry, Clive Owen was
The star and the driver. He played the driver. Yeah.
RSA. I can't remember who directed those.
And one of them
I
was by
don't.
Ang Lee, if memory serves. I think there was.
Yeah,
I want to say there was five different directors in those films.
yeah, maybe it was Ridley Scott did one, but it was a
I think
huge
so.
deal. Anyhow, it was
Yeah.
like big, heavy duty films, but the concentration was on the BMW and the car and what
Mm-hmm.
it could do. And it was all like a big James Bond kind of film kind of
Yeah.
thing. And there was a real story to it. And they used those films all over the place. So you would see them on billboards and you would see them, if you were going to see a feature film, they would be on there. Um, Anywhere they could get a screen up and running, they would utilize those. But back then, the websites weren't really that developed either.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not even sure. I can't even remember if they were on their website or not. I would imagine they would have used them, but they would have used them also in the car dealerships and things like that.
Yeah,
So
if memory serves,
content
I used to have a
making.
DVD. I had all of them on all. I think there was five movies, and I had them all on a DVD that I was able to watch. There's one with
Okay.
James Brown. There was I think one of them was where they have to get Madonna to a concert venue in time, or a Madonna type character.
Yes.
And then there's another one where there was it was like a kind of a James Bond shoot 'em up, and some of them were funny and some of them were more serious. So they were great. I remember, and they all highlighted a
Yeah.
specific car.
Uh huh. Yes. Yeah.
I'll put a link up to BMW films because I'm sure if you look hard enough on YouTube, you can still find them. So
Yeah.
anyway,
So branded content basically was brands like marketers developing content um, that it wasn't product placement and in your face as it was like an advertisement, like not going through all the features of a car. It was basically putting the car like putting it into a situation where it could tell a story about a car and what it could do and make it look sexy and really amp up the creative as far as people being really enticed by it, not sold by it.
mm-hmm. So today, we have YouTubers and podcasters who have exponentially higher reach than some of the big broadcast network partners that used to be, the only game in town. So, I think CNN reaches like less than 1 million people, and then you've got a YouTuber like Mr. Beast who puts out a video that can reach 500 million people. And obviously that's changed. How is this this movement, not only convergence but also the transition toward user generated content and YouTube and all that? How's that changed the production business?
Well, it's changed it dramatically because anybody can be their own publisher. It still needs to be quality content, but I find these days you can create your own channel on YouTube. There are people like because I'm in the design business, like let's use Sarah Richardson or somebody like her as an example, where she was doing TV shows and content through other brands like House and Home or for CTV or
Mm-hmm.
HGTV and that. And now she has her own YouTube channel where she develops content and programs and that, and people go in and watch it. They watch it there, and her audience is huge, and she has control over it. And she can make money off of that just because people, sell around it. There's pre-roll or, all the products based on who they're targeting. So she will make money that way and build up her own kind of um, channel network. Um, Down to having a lot of people these days. I'm thinking of it again from my perspective. I haven't done a great job in my transition in marketing myself because I was doing that every day and I wanted to get as far away from it as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you can create content of your own every day, and you can post it on a YouTube channel. You can post it on Instagram. You can post it on Facebook, and people are really interested in watching it. Like, if you're interested, like yourself, in doing a renovation on your house, and you want to see, oh, well, how do I take off the wallpaper? And where do I find the right wallpaper? And, if I need design advice, what designers, you Google it and you go to their channels and you watch their content. So I think it's changed from that perspective. I also think that the technology's changed so much that the quality to produce content at a much less expensive cost is available to those who want to produce it. Whereas before, even if you wanted to do a branded content video, you would have to hire a production studio that would come, and they would come with all the cameras and the
Mm-hmm.
lights and the sound, and they would have to edit it and everything else. So I think these days, I don't think it's as high of a quality of content if you're just doing it for Instagram and with your phone and that. And
Mm-hmm.
it is user generated and not like up there as far as quality, but people digest it, and they digest it in masses. And I don't think it bothers them so much. If it's interesting content, it doesn't have to be, the quality doesn't have to be like feature film or TV or
Right.
even TV commercial kind of quality.
So you spent 7 years working at Fifth Story, which has a somewhat unique business model, selling earned media placement instead of just paid ads or avails like a traditional broadcast agency would have. And it
Yeah.
seems like the whole business concept that Fifth Story employed was a little bit ahead of the curve because of influencer marketing, and affiliate links now are kind of everywhere. So, what do you think the future of advertising and marketing looks like to you? What's the future going to look like in 5 or 10 years?
Well, prior to that, the reason why I went into Fifth Story was because I was at a production company, and I was shooting very high end TV commercials for a good 10 years, where the budgets were quite high. And I was using, some of the biggest directors in the world to shoot that product. And I found by the seventh year, probably in that, the digital content appetite was going up big time, and clients were not wanting to put as much money into the TV commercials, and they wanted to produce more digital content for
Mm-hmm.
websites and the rest of it. So it was a bit of a trend, and the content marketing business was definitely on an uprise, and it was a much needed resource for marketers and agencies. So Shelley, who I started with in my career, was offered a president job at a company called News Canada. And they had a cap service. I don't want to call it a cap, but they had a PR offering, which was essentially content that they would put out. They would put on a website, and um, magazines and newspapers across the country would come in and pick it up, and they would report on the coverage. So they were ahead of their time from that perspective, because it wasn't client written, although they did. It was, the content in it was approved by the client, and it had to have an angle that um, either mentioned the brand or incorporated the brand product in some way into the story.
Which really is
So,
the same kind of idea as the branded content we were talking about with the BMW films, right? Where you have
correct.
the brand of the product doing something and not just being talked about in a salesy way, right? It's a story and not an ad.
Yeah. So if it was a soup recipe or something, and Campbell's wanted to be, involved, then they would create a story about, oh, what are you cooking for your children's lunch, and what has got the best ingredients in it, and they would develop a recipe with Campbell's, and it would kind of link back to them in the end, or it was makeup or anything, but it was
Mm-hmm.
driven by that. And it was very it is today, and it was a great offering, especially for PR agencies that find it very difficult today to get eyeballs and mass reach. So that's where at Fifth Story, it wasn't called Fifth Story at that point, it was called News Canada, and we launched a content division, basically to produce content, and that was a little bit more creative. And one of the offerings was the News Canada offering if they wanted to use that. So it was basically building out a content marketing studio. And it was ahead of its time. It was a very competitive landscape, and people were jumping on that bandwagon pretty quick. So I think, sorry, what question? I've lost my train of thought now.
Yeah, no, I think the I was really looking at what the future of the market looks like, because Fifth Story, because News Canada was somewhat ahead of the curve. Um,
Yeah,
you kind of had the beginning, middle, and end of branded content that you were able to see from a 50,000 foot view,
yeah,
because again, you had been kind of on both sides of the aisle, or both sides of the cash register, as it were. And then you had obviously that movement and that growth throughout your career there, and then you left. So I guess the question is twofold. The first one, what do you think the future holds, or what do you think the future is going to look like? And then we can maybe touch on a little bit about why you decided to get out of the industry and didn't continue working in it.
well, the future of the business is tough. I'm not quite sure where it's going to end up. I think clients these days are bringing a lot in house. I think the PepsiCos of the world are building their own in-house agencies and studios and producing a lot of their content because it's more cost effective. And I think there's a lot of great talent out there that has worked in the traditional companies that is now signing on with the bigger brands and going there. So if you're a creative director, and you have a lot of experience and you want to continue in that business, then there are a lot of big companies like the PepsiCos that want to bring you in-house and build more of an in-house agency. And it's the same as production, because the appetite is there, and they need so much content on a regular basis and marketing and outreach, that I think the future of that business, I think a lot of it is going to go in-house. I think the agencies too are building out in different ways. I think their commodity is definitely still the creative, and they're a very young business, and they're always looking for interesting new creative talent to up the ante and to win them awards. So they have a lot of resilience, I find, the ad agencies. So I'm not quite sure. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I think there's a lot of mid-range clients that can't afford to bring a lot of, build an in-house agency and studio in-house. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that the agencies will still be able to work with a lot of the mid-range clients. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the bigger clients will do work with the agencies for big launch campaigns and creative direction. And that, and a bit of planning and strategy. But I do think more and more the clients are going to bring more in house. So that's kind of where I think the future of it is going. um, as far as as far as me keeping track of that and reading strategy and marketing and that, I do tend to still pick it up and read and keep up with it.
Yep.
And I did think, the agencies were going to be kind of, we're going to go the way of the dodo bird around 10 years ago, because it seemed like clients were taking over on every front. But they have managed to stay the course and build in different ways. So who knows?
So
Um,
and you decided at this point, I guess it was what, 7 years ago now, so 6 7 years ago, you decided let's take a direction, and then what is it, 3 years ago you started Thomas Design and Build?
yeah, it's been 3.5 years now. So, when I look back, I think most of my career, all my experiences have brought a ton. They've benefited me tremendously in so many different ways.
Mm.
So from the beginning in sales and marketing and learning how to manage people and budgets and bottom line and all the rest of it, you can take those skills and utilize them in any business. So um, I think that every step of my career I've been able to use for the next kind of career that I've gone into. So I started out more in sales, then went into publishing, then went into production full time, then went into the agency side of the business. And the agency side at the end, the content agency side, I wasn't loving for the last few years. And it wasn't creative enough for me. And I had always wanted to go into interior design. And I was a bit scared to go into it. I had been doing it on the side, and I tested the waters, and I'd been published in a couple magazines, and I never really thought of it as a business. And I knew a lot of people in the business, and I saw how much fun they were having and how
Mm-hmm.
they enjoyed their careers and how it was a big business. And, it wasn't just a cottage business. So I decided to kind of test the waters. Before I left Fifth Story, I was doing a bit of work for a couple friends on the side. And I started to build it up, and then it was the right decision. They were cutting back, and they had let go a lot of people, and they wanted to change the direction of the company. And I wasn't on board with a lot of the things that they were doing. So they ended up packaging a group of us out, including Shelley, who was one of the main reasons why I was there. And it kind of kicked my ass a little. And I was like, you know what? You got to do what you love. Like, you're getting to the
Mm-hmm.
age now where get
life
on with
life
it.
offers no dress rehearsals, right?
Yeah. So there isn't, life is not a dress rehearsal. You have one
Mm.
chance at it. So you might as well take advantage of it. So I reached out to some of my marketing peeps and branding friends, and they helped me build my logo and my website, and build out the content with me on the website. And I had I had already started working on jobs, and it just was instant. And I've been busy ever since I launched. It's been insane, actually. Um, it was a bit intimidating at first because I was used to knowing everybody and everything about an industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I was, asked a question or needed an anecdote or an experience, that's the part where I was like, oh, if clients are asking you certain things and you can't answer the questions, it's kind of like, ow. Even though I felt I had the design sensibilities and the taste, it was still some of the experience I didn't have. So that was a bit daunting at first. But you kind of learn to, walk around that and then bring the people in that if you need assistance to help you out. And I had a lot of friends in the business, in this
Mm-hmm.
business, that were very helpful and very supportive. And I got past that pretty quick. It was probably the first year I was, feeling a bit insecure about it, even though I was working nonstop. Like I worked 7 days a week, every night, everything. Like it was pretty crazy.
Now, did it feel
And
like work, or did you love it enough that it didn't feel like work?
no, it didn't feel like work. It that was one of my. I was going to bring that up in the end because you really should do what you love. Like if I'm giving advice to my friends' kids that are coming out of university now,
Mm-hmm.
I always say to them, if there's anything that you gravitate towards, if there's, it doesn't matter what it is, try and get into that business because your natural ability it won't feel like work. You'll grow and the money will come. So don't think about the money first. Think about what you want to do
Mm-hmm.
and then figure out a way to get into that business. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, if you want to get into the design business, then, if you have to go work for a retailer in the design business, or if you have to go to work for another interior designer, um, and be the guy that delivers packages, do it. Because at some point, you'll be having a conversation with somebody and they'll be like, actually, you know what? You've got a great point of view there. And you seem to have a natural ability. Why don't we, bring you in on one of these meetings and see if you can help us out in different ways. So I think that's pretty important. I mean, I if I look back, the two industries that I really had passion about were fashion and interior design, as a young child and
Mm-hmm.
growing up and the rest of it. But I didn't know anybody in those businesses at that point, when I was looking for a job. And when you're looking for a job, um, you're kind of like, okay, I just need to make money, and where can I go, and what have I been exposed to? So with my dad having an ad agency, and my sister already working at an ad agency, I was exposed to a lot of the advertising and marketing business. So don't always go that route unless you really love it. I did love everything I did, to be honest, quite a bit in the beginning of my career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in every stage, it was interesting. So I don't regret it. Um, the only time I think I should have made a decision that I didn't was after I was at Imported Artist Film Company in production. And I left there. I toyed with getting into the design industry, and I was making such good money at that point that
Mm.
I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to start over.
Right.
But that's when I should have done it. I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have gone on for another chapter either. I think that I did learn quite a bit of Fifth Story, but it wasn't creative enough for me. Um, and it was more of a big business, and having a lot of direct reports, and meetings all day long, and it wasn't as exciting as all the other jobs that I'd done before for me.
Mm-hmm.
um, so it wasn't that it wasn't a good company and a good experience in that, but it wasn't a good fit for me. So
So
one
what
piece of
with
advice
yeah, I was just gonna say,
is
what's your piece of advice for someone who's looking now at this point in 2024, someone looking to get into the film, television, broadcasting, media business? What advice do you have for them?
to get into the film and television business.
Film, we'll call it film, television, media, broadcasting. YouTubing for that matter. The media, the content creation business. What's your advice?
Um, if that's where your passion is, then get as much experience as you can in as many places as you can. So that is quite a broad. It's very broad, that whole group. So I mean, there's production, there is the advertising, there is working direct for a client in marketing. Um, then in marketing, there is other sectors. So there's public relations, there's advertising, there's content development. Um, I think you definitely need these days to take a good course, even if it's a certificate at one of the colleges, to understand all the different areas of that business and figure out, where you think you'd like to concentrate. And then I would get in on any level. you can and work for one of those companies. So if you're leaning towards production, go and be a director's lackey. Like, you don't even have to get paid. Just go and spend time on set and figure out what they do. And then if you find that, you're working with the director and you're like, oh, I really like kind of what the camera operator is doing, ask the camera operator, can, I assist you for a day? Any of that type of experience is invaluable. I think that, the more of that you've got to bring to the table when you're interviewing, you do have something that you can discuss and why you like it, and how you're passionate about it. So any of those companies, I would say, just try and get in the door. And don't worry so much about your resume. It's more you're passionate about it. So when you're being interviewed for something, when I was interviewing people, it didn't matter if they had an MBA, if they couldn't, if they weren't passionate about what they wanted to do, and that it was kind of like, oh, you know what, if you're not really into it and growing and developing, then you probably aren't the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just very important to go with your passions.
Awesome. And it's nice to see that with Thomas Design and Build, you are now living a passion that you've had since you were a young person. So kudos to you for being able to leave that world behind and not just chase money, but to be able to live your passion and your truth and your your area of love. So congratulations. It's awesome. And thank you, by the way, for being on our one of our effectively our inaugural podcasts, because this is still a very young channel, and I think we're up to 12 subscribers now, or maybe 13. So hopefully we can do more conversations with individuals like yourself, and we really appreciate your time. So thank you very much, Tom.
Okay, thank you very much. I did want to say one last thing to you that,
yeah,
I am, and I don't really want to say my age, but I'm mid-50s now, which is getting up there. So I am saying my age. And I find that in business these days, a lot of people are recreating their careers at, an older age. So I wouldn't be afraid of that. And I would definitely jump in to other areas and do research, because if you've done a lot of things and you've kind of conquered majority of a business, it's always fun to jump into something new too.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought I'd say that as well.
I think that's great. So it's just, I was going to ask you the last question, but I think you've already covered it. Just what have you learned?
What have I learned, like in my new business, or what have I learned in general over?
I guess it's really a two-pronged question. So what have you learned through the process of going through this career reinvention at this later stage in life? What have you learned about yourself, and what have you learned about the process of reinvention?
One major thing is the skills that you've got from other businesses you can use in just about any business. So any of your sales or marketing or bottom line accounting, business plans, any of your experience you can use and bring forward. So that is you're already in a good place. So if you can find another business that you're passionate about, all those skills you can utilize. I have found in the interior design business, it hasn't been an issue of me bringing in business. The toughest part is building out the teams and finding the people that have the same vision and talent and drive. And I think a lot of businesses find that. But when you're new to the business, it's tougher to find those parts of the equation. Mm-hmm. Now, after a few years, I've got all those people in place, and it's great. I've got great teams depending on the product, depending on the client and what we're doing. But most of the business acumen and the bottom line and dealing with clients and that, I actually find I'm better off than most of the interior designers in the business because I've had to deal with so many different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So, most interior design companies have been doing this since they were very young. And from a business perspective, it's not as easy for them, and they haven't been exposed to the marketing and advertising and production business that's pretty cutthroat and changes consistently all the time. So
awesome. So basically, what you're saying is that the skills you've learned in one business are easily transferable, and maybe not necessarily as much to an HR department, because I know it's in my experience, I found it difficult to get HR people to think outside of the box a little bit. But when you start your own business, you don't have any of those handicaps. You can start your own thing and just decide what kind of work you want to do, and which of your skills are going to be applicable or beneficial in a new role. So, kudos to you for being able to reinvent yourself and then start something that's in line with your passions. So awesome.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this has been Tom
Thanks.
Symes. Tom is the owner, operator, designer at Thomas Design and Build. And so if you are looking for interior design help, I'll put his website down in the description below. And please tune in for the next one.